Hey Nadia, how are you?
Hey, how are you?
Good, thank you. Thank you so much for being here with us today. Super excited to have you and also to meet you sort of kind of face to face after following what you've been doing on social media and your writing for so long. It's super exciting.
Oh, thank you. No, I absolutely love the work you do too, and it's really nice to just connect with like-minded women.
Yeah, exactly. Actually, face to face, not just like via typing. Awesome.
Yeah.
So you're a sex positive journalist, you're a media commentator, and I love this. You're the internet's queen of TMI. So you're all about empowering women in their sex lives. You're also the publisher at She Said, which is an awesome online destination for real women telling real stories. But I would love to know where you started and how that sort of led to where you are now.
How much time do you have?
You can do the condensed version.
The condensed version. No, well, I when I first got into writing, into journalism, the main thing for me was, I guess, just finding my niche and kind of finding where I fit, and I did lots of different things. I worked for a tween magazine. I was a beauty editor. And then finally I started working on She Said. And it was actually quite funny because I really saw that as my first opportunity to be able to write completely as myself. I wasn't writing, about celebrity gossip or about beauty. I could just write about things that were impacting me as a woman, because that's what She Said's all about. And so it was interesting. I started writing very openly about my dating life and my sex life, my mental health. And I met up with some old work colleagues, and they said to me, we're loving like this new content that you're putting up, but we're a bit concerned because it's very revealing. Like, you're talking about some really dark stuff you've been through mentally. You're talking about your sex life. Like, are you sure this is what you want your brand to be associated with? Because, this can follow you. You have to think carefully for your career as a writer. And I really, to this day, still respect those women's opinions so much. So I really went home and I really thought about it. And I thought about, what if someone wouldn't hire me based on the fact that I have written about, the fact that I've suffered from mental illness, spoken very explicitly about my sex life. And then I actually thought, you know what, I actually wouldn't want to work for someone like that. I really, it almost helped me to identify what my X factor, if you want to call it that, as a writer was, which was just being authentic. And it was from that day that I really decided, actually, that's my brand, and I'm going to go with that times 100. And so I just kept doing that. And I went through, I guess, an experience that a lot of women go through. I went through a relationship breakdown, more specifically a marriage breakdown. I was in my early 20s, got married, and just, expected it all to fall together like I'd been kind of taught it would, but I just wasn't mentally or emotionally ready for everything that a marriage sort of entailed, I guess. And so when my husband and I broke up after 7 years, I wrote about it, and I wrote about re-entering the dating world really for the first time. I'd only ever really had boyfriends my whole life, and being on the single sort of casual sex kind of modern hookup culture scene and what that was like. And people loved it. My articles were going crazy. They were getting so much traffic. And it was very cathartic for me. It was almost like a therapy session, getting to write about, these experiences I was having as I was learning about myself really for the first time as a woman sexually. I realized I'd never taken the time to do that before. And that was when I realized this is my calling. So I'd known for a few years my calling was to be super authentic, but that was when I really realized writing about sex and the ways that sex can empower women so far beyond the bedroom. I talk about empowering yourself in the bedroom leads you to ultimately be empowered in the boardroom, which sounds like a crazy leap, but it's really not.
I can see that for sure.
That was when I realized that was my calling. And so I'm very passionate about it now. I guess my sort of philosophy is, if you can speak up for yourself when you're at your most vulnerable, which women have been told not to, we've been taught that sex is a service we give to usually a man. Then if we can speak up for ourselves in that most vulnerable time, we are quite literally stripped naked. It's very exposing. then walking into your boss's office and asking for a pay rise really isn't such a daunting thing, you know? So that sort of really, I guess, gave me a lot of passion behind that topic, and I've just sort of been running with it ever since.
Awesome. And I feel like you were very ahead of your time with obviously being very authentic and, you know, being very, not being afraid to be vulnerable about yourself, because obviously that's where we're seeing social media going now. People want more of that. They want more of the truth and, you know, even just talking about taboo subjects. So you were a bit of a trailblazer there.
Oh, thank you.
And I want to ask, if you don't mind me asking, have you always been someone who's felt very naturally, just very comfortable in your sexuality and that sort of thing? Or is that something that's sort of grown over time, or even after sort of re-emerging into the dating world?
Oh, I definitely would not describe. It's funny because people say, oh, you know, I wish, you know, I was just born with your confidence and your sexual confidence, all of that. Like, you're just so lucky. And you know, I always say, well, if you had have only seen me 5 years ago, you would have seen a very different person. I've always been someone who's been confident, just confident in general, around my friends and people I know, but I was never confident in social situations. I would generally be quite quiet. Now I will speak to anyone. I'm very confident. And it honestly did come from being empowered in my sexuality, as crazy as that sounds. I think because I got into a marriage at a young age, like so many women do, you know, in my early 20s, I never really got time to explore even what my sexuality meant. And of course, school sex ed kind of lets us down. It specifically lets women down. It lets young girls down. But it doesn't teach us really anything about our bodies. We certainly don't learn about the fact that women can experience sexual pleasure. We learn about a lot of pain. You know, we learn about unwanted pregnancy and the pain of periods. We learn that boys experience pleasure. They have erections.
We just learn about the nice, like the negative stuff, not the positive stuff that can actually come from it.
It's doom and gloom. Like, you're scared of sex. You literally.
Oh my God, I don't ever want to do it.
So many girls get told, I know I was told, when you lose your virginity, it's going to hurt. And so you're like,
why would I ever want to do it? Yeah.
It's very, very appealing. So to me, I think, like the majority of women probably listening in today, sex to me wasn't something that I was able to exchange with a boyfriend in order to secure his commitment. It was never an act that I did for myself. It was never anything in which I really thought about my own pleasure or my own satisfaction or fulfillment. And it was actually through my marriage breakdown that I was able to learn about that. Not because I didn't have, I mean, to this day, I still have a good relationship with my ex-husband. You know, he was an amazing partner. I couldn't say anything bad of him. But I myself wasn't in a place where I really understood my sexuality as a woman. And it was, ironically, it was through having a ton of anonymous casual sex, which, by the way, you don't need to go out and have a ton of anonymous casual sex.
That's just one way, you know, just to learn what you like, though.
Yeah. And do you know what it was? For me, there was a kind of freedom in having sex with a stranger, because when you're having sex with a guy that you know you're never going to see the next day, there's actually a lot less pressure to try to conform. It's funny because when I was with my husband, who I love more than anything in the world, I was constantly thinking about, you know, being, you know, the wife, being what he needed me to be, making sure that I wouldn't do anything to make him, you know, maybe think less of me or think I was a bit weird or a bit of a pervert or whatever. If I asked for something in the bedroom, you know, what might he think of me? And again, that was all self-inflicted. It was never that he'd shamed me over anything, but that was my own stuff going on from what I'd been taught as a woman. And when I wasn't going to see a guy the next day, I thought, who cares? Who cares if he thinks I'm a weirdo? Who cares if
like, good. I want him to think that.
Yeah, who cares? Who cares even if I humiliate myself? The humiliation's going to be temporary. I'm never seeing him again. And so it was actually through that I got more confident to just ask for things. And I'm not talking about having some sort of kinky, crazy experience. I'm talking about asking for really just basic stuff, like being touched in certain places, you know, doing things that weren't causing me discomfort or pain, that were actually bringing me direct pleasure. And when I was able to do that, it just, over time, it became easier and easier. And, you know, I always say, I put it this way, I don't know if this will have to be censored, but I say to women, you know, when you're looking down the barrel of a penis and you can speak up for yourself.
No censorship here. That's going in.
speaking up for yourself, you know, like I was saying earlier in a boardroom meeting or whatever, it becomes so much easier. And so that actually flowed on to confidence in my everyday life. That was really gave me the confidence to go and start my own business, to just become so much more outgoing as a person socially. Like I said, I was always outgoing with my friends. My friends would have always described me as confident, but to just go out and not be afraid of to interact with people and meet people, even a circumstance like this would have been so nerve-wracking to me. Whereas now I feel like, to me, I don't bear that weight of worrying about what you or anyone listening might think of me, because I know what I think of myself. And that in and of itself is just so freeing. It leads to confidence, in your body, in your sexuality, and everything. But it's been a journey. And I think that's why I write so personally when I write about sex, because I want women, especially men too, but women especially, to understand that it's a journey. It's not, you're not just born with this sexual confidence. If anything, as women, we're taught socially to repress our sexuality.
Yeah, definitely. And I was going to say, I feel like there's this kind of idea, and I don't know where it's come from, probably media or porn, that, and, you know, and even probably just from ourselves, the pressure we all put on ourselves, women, that you have to look a certain way or be like, you know, to have a great sex life or to be desirable in the bedroom. Is that something that you've ever dealt with? And if so, how have you kind of, how have you come to terms with it?
100%. I mean, I think the thing that we all as women learn at a certain point in our life, we think that beauty and sexiness and sex appeal is tied, unfortunately, very depressingly, most of us think it's tied to a certain body weight, because our culture basically just overwhelms women with just the diet culture messaging is just, you can't avoid it. It's just everywhere all the time. So most of us believe that attractability, all of that is tied to a body weight. But for any woman who's dieted herself down to that body weight and achieved that body weight, I know I've been there in my 20s, those women know, as I know, that you get to that perceived ideal goal weight or whatever, and it's no different. You still have that
same person. Yeah, it's still the same insecurities. 100%.
Yep. If anything, the self-loathing and the insecurities are more intense, because you've tied your self-worth so intrinsically to this number, and then you get to that number and you realize that there's no pot of gold, you know, on the scales. It's still the same. So, and I know, like, this is a little bit of a cliche and everyone's probably sick of hearing this, but it is so true that when you own your body and you own your sexuality, regardless of your size, men find it immensely sexy. And it really is the truth. Now, are there superficial people in society? Of course. There are disgusting people who body shame. I experience a lot of body shaming myself online. But overwhelmingly, I experience so many comments from people saying, oh, you just ooze sex appeal. And I think, well, I'm just an average looking person. I'm not a Victoria's Secret model. The reason I'm able to...
You look amazing, by the way. But yeah, I know, like 0.1% of the population, the thing that we put on a pedestal, Victoria's Secret, none of us look like that. They probably don't even look like that most of the time.
Exactly. It's all about angles. I've got my ring light on. I've got my on the laptop at the moment. But,
I need to get that.
It's not about looking like a Victoria's Secret model. The reason I ooze sex appeal is because of the fact that I own my sexuality. I laugh and smile a lot. It oozes confidence. It's very attractive.
Yeah.
I used to have a girl that I knew once. She was probably, by sort of conventional beauty standards, what you would call just very like a very plain average girl next door kind of looking person. I hate the idea of categorizing any woman by her looks, but just for the sake of
what society would call that sort of look. Yeah.
Right. So she was not necessarily head-turningly beautiful, but every single time she was around men, they were just drawn to her. And if she was ever at a party or anything, men would always ask me, do you know if she's single? Is she available? And the thing I absolutely put it down to, like I say, she didn't really dress sexy. She didn't wear makeup. She was, like I say, she wouldn't necessarily tick the boxes of society's conventional beauty standards. But what she did is she was so confident and happy all the time. And every time you saw her, she was laughing and smiling. And there was just a sense, even as, you know, not just everyone around her wanted to be around her, because it just seemed like she radiated joy. And we don't want to be around someone that radiates doom and gloom. You know, it's just we naturally gravitate towards
that. Yeah.
Good. And so it wasn't about wearing a push-up bra, having a certain hair color, wearing a makeup style. It wasn't about any of that, or even being a certain weight. She was what you would call a very just average Australian body weight. It was literally about the way that she carried herself. And it was honestly phenomenal to watch the way that men were just drawn to her everywhere she went. I remember commenting on it and saying, are you noticing this? Like, everywhere you go, like, what is your technique? And it didn't occur to me until years later that there was no technique. It was just literally the fact that she was so confident in herself that she just radiated that just desirability.
Yeah, I think of Lizzo when I think of people who don't maybe fit that like conventional beauty standards, but just ooze confidence and like self-belief and like sexiness. Like, I'm like, I want to look like her, because she just like, you know, I think we all know people like that. So it's really great to hear that insight of like, you know, it really is just like being happy within yourself. And you can find that where you can work on that like at any stage in your life, and no matter, you know, what you look like. So that's awesome. And let's get more into your career. So are there any times that stand out for you in your career where you've kind of done something before you felt ready?
Like my whole career.
Yeah.
It's funny because it's sort of actually been both ways, because actually what happened when I went to uni and I did a Bachelor of Arts it was called a Bachelor of Arts in Acting for Stage and Screen. It was like theatre and drama, and I did this whole degree, and I got to the end of it and realised, well, I had a lot of fun doing the degree. Oh my God, like, what am I even going to do with myself? It's not like, what job could I even get out of this degree? I hadn't really sort of thought it through. And so I thought, at that time you could tap on the end and do an additional year and become a teacher. I think now you have to do a bit longer, but at that time it was called a Diploma of Education. So I stayed at uni for another year and got a Diploma of Education, and I was able to teach English and drama because of what I studied previously. And I went and started teaching English and drama in high school, and I really enjoyed it. I really thoroughly enjoyed that job. But there was always a little something missing, and I realised it. I eventually got a job working at a academically selective all-girls high school, where the girls were just so driven. They always wanted to learn more, and so they would stay back after class and bring these essays that they'd just written off their own initiative and want feedback and stuff on them. It was a serious joy.
That's unheard of.
And because of that, I realized just how incredibly passionate I was about writing and editing and just creating, you know, magic out of words, the way that you can put words together to really, you can take something so boring and make it so magical just with the way you craft words. And that was when I realized, shit, I should have bloody studied journalism. That's what I should have done. And I actually felt it was too late for me. I was now, by this stage, I was married. I'd moved out of home. I had bills to pay, you know, and I thought, I can't do this. It's too late. I missed the boat. I did enjoy teaching. It wasn't the thing that made me spring out of bed in the morning. And so I thought maybe I should just be appreciative, you know, of what I have. And eventually one day I just decided to bite the bullet, and I called the uni and said, you know, what would it take for me to get a journalism degree? And I said, because I really am not in a stage to afford to go back to uni now. You know, I've got bills and stuff. And they said, well, actually you can keep teaching and you can do a journalism by distance degree. So I did it. It took me a bloody long time because I was managing it with work. And it was very bizarre entering. I realized, you know, I got out of that when I was 26, and I did some research and realized no one's going to hire me until I've done an internship, which was all new to me, an unpaid internship. And I realized that all these girls had been interning since they were like 17, 18 years old. Here I was 26. And also, I'm in a hurry to start getting in a paid job because my husband at this point is covering all the bills now, so I can go and do these internships. So while I was extremely late to the game in that sense, and a lot of people told me it's too late now, you've missed the boat, like you needed to start earlier, once I got into the internship, because I had that already in my head, I did a lot of things before I was ready. Whatever was the task that I was given when I was interning, I would always try to find a way to just like go above and beyond, to make an impact, in the hopes that, it might lead to some sort of job opportunity. And I remember being asked to do some research for a story. It was for a bridal magazine I was interning for. And I'd finished doing the research well ahead of time. And the journalist I was working with still wasn't back from her lunch break. So I thought, this is a bit cheeky, but I'm just going to go ahead and start writing it. And, that was totally, before I was ready to be really writing.
You showed the initiative, like you just jumped in, yeah.
100%. And it was a huge risk. And when she came back, she actually saw it and she said, "Oh, why are you writing this? Like, I didn't ask you to write it. Like, we can't, this isn't going to look good to have, you having written it when I was supposed to write it." I was like, "Oh, okay." And then she started to read it and she's like, "Oh, this is actually really good. Wow, you've done a good job of this." And she's like, "You know what? Finish writing the story," because I was about halfway through it at this point. Yeah. She said, "Finish writing the story. We'll put your name to it." And because of that, I had a tear sheet that I was able to take to other titles and to start getting like writing work. And I just grew and grew and grew from there. And I always have been like that, like people think, like when I've done TV and radio stuff, like, "Oh, you had a manager, or you knew someone in the industry or something." No, I was in no way prepared or ready to go and do any kind of TV stuff. And I just knew, like, I need to break through. I need to go to the next step in my career. So I just started obsessively researching what were, on LinkedIn, all the names of all the executive producers of all the TV shows, and just emailing, like dozens and dozens of emails I was sending every day and doing follow-ups, hearing nothing back, and then it was finally, I heard back from one and they said, "Well, we'll give you a chance. You can come and do a segment, obviously unpaid, and we'll see how it goes." And so I went and did that. I completely feel that I was not ready for that. My heart was pounding out of my chest at the time. I was like, I'd stayed up all night before, like rehearsing what I was going to say when they asked me certain questions. I in no way felt ready for that. And I think the thing that I've learned through my career is, if you wait till you feel ready, you'll never do anything. Because I've never felt ready to go. And, the first time I hosted a media event, and you're walking up in front of this room full of people and you think, and I remember hosting an event I'd been asked to host, and there were women in the audience who were so much more senior than me, who I had so admired throughout my career. And I was like, I'm not ready to do this. Like, look at them. Like, they're like so much more advanced than me. But it was about just biting the bullet and doing it anyway. So I think it's really about taking risks. You have to take risks. The worst thing that can happen, people are so worried about failure. So what? You failed. Just get up and go again. I always think of J.K. Rowling and how she got rejected like 12 or 13 times when she was writing Harry Potter. So I always think of that. Like, imagine if she had just gone after the first 2 or 3 rejections. "Oh, well, I guess I'm not ready yet." It's not about being ready. It's about just going for it.
Yeah. Or if she had waited another 30 years to even pitch her idea to someone, like, then we probably wouldn't have the amazing thing that is Harry Potter. I think it's, just diving in before you feel like you said, it's never the right time. And also I think taking the initiative, and I think for me, a big thing in my career has been being proactive about stuff, like doing things before I'm maybe expected to do them. It's such a huge thing. And what about with your YouTube? So I know you're doing YouTube now. Did you feel like you had that all figured out? Because there's so much that goes into YouTube, even technical things. Did you just sort of be like, I've got what I need to, I've got myself, I've got a camera, and just dive in?
Well, I did have the normal mindset, I think, that a lot of people have, which was that I can't start a channel until I have, a lighting set up, a camera, till I know what I'm doing. Like, really, what am I going to be talking about? What am I going to be doing? How is it going to be edited? I need to learn how to edit a video. And then, again, it was just another one of those moments one day where I thought, well, screw it. I'm just going to make a video and just give it a go. And I just literally got out my phone. It was absolutely terrible lighting. The footage is so grainy. And amazingly, that video did really well, and it made me actually realize people are more interested in the content and what you've got to say than necessarily the production values. Now I like to think my production values are fairly good. I've invested in a good camera. I've invested in lighting. I even have a professional video editor now. But if I hadn't have started before I was ready, if I hadn't have started when I had nothing, I had no skill in making YouTube videos. I never made a YouTube video before. I didn't know the first thing about it. If I hadn't have just got started, it would have taken, like, I wouldn't be where I am today. You know, I was able to grow, which is still phenomenal for me to even think about, from 0 to 200,000 subscribers in the space of 12 months. And that was
insane. Because if you hadn't started, then you probably might not have that amount of subscribers now. Like,
one of the best pieces of advice I've been given by anyone is about YouTube, and I think it applies to any career regardless of what you're doing, is just accept, just get it in your mind, accept it, go with it. Your first 100 videos are going to be terrible. You're going to look back on them and cringe. They're going to be so bad, they're going to make you shut up. But you need to get those first 100 videos to get to the next 100 videos. And not about that, but every time I made a video, I learned something. You know, I'd go and look at the analytics. Oh, people are getting bored here. I need to add some editing cuts. Oh, I should have thought about sitting closer to the window so I could have some more natural light. You know, you learn things every time. People want to only start when they're ready and when something's perfect. The reality is none of us are perfect. We'll never be perfect. And perfectionism cripples people, and it destroys any opportunity of ever doing anything. If you accept that you absolutely will, not that you might fail, but that you will fail and that you'll fail spectacularly, it's very freeing. And that was the same attitude I had with my sex life, was I'm probably going to humiliate myself in front of this guy, but I'm already accepting that, and who cares? I won't see him tomorrow. And that was the thing with my videos too. I thought, who cares? I don't have to meet these people in real life. Who cares what these people think of me if they think I look terrible on camera, I'm a disaster, I don't know what I'm talking about. I'm learning, I'm jumping in, and I'm getting started. So it's that approach can apply to career, love life, everything. You need to, I think it's so profound that you're doing this, that concept of before you're ready, because I think more people need to take the leap before they feel ready.
Yeah, because I feel like that time just never comes. Like, is there even such a thing as being 100% ready to do anything? Like, how do you define that? It's the same as perfect. How do you define perfect? There's no like one definition. So it's like, just tell yourself that you're ready and you're perfect now, and just like get into it. But on the flip side, have you ever had times in your career that you thought, oh, maybe I should have actually waited a bit longer to do this, or it wasn't the right time? Like, do you have any like career regrets, or even life regrets?
You know, I definitely could, but because I think about like, oh gosh, like I definitely got into marriage too early. You know, I just fell madly in love with a boy, and I didn't even really think it through. I guess we'll get married and start a life together. And I mean, we got married within 6 months of starting a relationship.
Wow.
And the same with my going into journalism was actually quite a snap decision. Like, I already had a very steady and actually very reliable career with teaching. I had really proven myself as a teacher. I had really good, steady, consistent work, good pay, good conditions, all of that. So, you know, and when I've made those big leaps, I would be lying to say that they haven't caused intense challenges and pain and suffering in my life. Like, even making the change from teaching to journalism, I'm not going to pretend like that was an easy change. That was horrific. If I had to redo it, I would, because I love where I am now, but I don't know that I would necessarily want to. It was a huge struggle. And the same with having your heart broken into a million pieces, and the embarrassment of going to everyone that you invited to your wedding. Hey, you know how I made a big scene about how in love I am and about how my love is so much better than all of yours because it's going to last forever. Yeah, well, that thing, that little thing that
not
didn't
happening.
But then I think about, it was from that suffering and that struggle that I've actually become who I am today. Like, the whole reason I'm so passionate about sex was because I was heartbroken, and I went on Tinder and had a bunch of casual sex and realized that I could learn about myself through that process, and started writing about it. Like, none of these things would have happened You know, have I made mistakes in my career as a writer? Have I written about things that I've later gone, you know, I should have thought that through. I went too far and I clickbaited people or whatever. Of course. But if I hadn't have done those things, I wouldn't be right here, right now, which is, you know, I launched my own business a year ago. I started with essentially nothing. I have 200,000 YouTube subscribers. I've taken on a team of 4 people. I've got my own column now on news.com.au, which is Australia's biggest news website. That was my dream for such a long time. And I've got so many exciting projects that are still a little bit confidential, but very big, exciting projects coming up that I just have to pinch myself to think, how am I doing that? But it's because I did all of those things. And I actually did an Instagram post recently on it. And I said, you know, a lot of people actually comment to me. I get it quite regularly. People say, oh, your career's really blown up in the last year. You're so lucky. And I say, well, yes and no. I agree. It's like it has blown up, but it hasn't really. Because what you haven't seen is the 10 years.
Yeah, overnight success, but it's like 10 years in the making. Yeah,
the 10 years that I groveled as an intern, and I happily got people coffees. I Windexed people's desks. I was so appreciative to even be in that space, that anyone was going to give me an opportunity to prove myself. And this is a very Gary V comment, but it's so true. I loved the process. I loved the journey. It wasn't about an end result, because I was so happy, like, just to be living my authentic. So even if I was Windexing someone's desk, I was being my most authentic self, which was being in a building where people were making magazines, being a writer, you know, even though I wasn't technically typing anything yet. So I was living authentically. So yes, the success I have now is amazing, but to me, it's just a cherry on the top. It's not what I was ever aiming for. And I think once people stop focusing on that end thing of, I have to be here and until my business makes $1 million, or I achieve this milestone, or I marry this person, or whatever it is, then I'm not successful. And we should be really weighting our success off our happiness and how authentically are we living, regardless of what anyone thinks. I don't care if people think I'm crazy or whatever. I'm living my most authentic self, and that for me is, you know, massively satisfying.
Yeah, and that's something people can do right now. Like, I guess it starts with making the choice. Like, I'm going to be happy with what I have. I know it takes a bit of work in terms of mindset, but, you know, it's something that you can choose at any point in time. And I'm very happy you started all these things and took risks before you felt ready, because we wouldn't have all the amazing value and wisdom that you shared with us today if not. So I'm very happy for that.
Thank you.
And where can everyone find you online, and do you have anything in particular you would like to share with them?
You can go and find me on Instagram or YouTube. It's just Nadia Bokody. And, you know, go and check out my weekly column on news.com.au. Follow me, because I've got lots of exciting things coming up, and hopefully, you know, you might get some little tips along the way to just be, you know, more authentic in yourself. And I always think, especially as a journalist, I think all those crazy risks and stuff I took and the mistakes I made and all of that, that's led me to have some great content.
Yeah. I can definitely vouch for that. Yeah, your feed and your articles are amazing. I find it really difficult to write about myself as a journalist. I think that's something you do so incredibly well, and I guess, you know, you've lived a very full life, so that's, you know, obviously helps. You've been through a lot of different experiences. But yeah, I really admire your ability to write so well about yourself, because I'm very much like, I just write about other things.
I think it's about finding your calling in your like area, like, you know, they say like your genius zone or whatever. And you so clearly do that with the work that you do, which is so inspiring and empowering to so many women. I've obviously been following you for quite some time, and, you know, love the work you do, and so do many of my girlfriends. So yeah, I think it's just about, it's not about, I would never want anyone to watch this and go, oh, I have to try and like replicate what she's done. It's not about that. It's about, you know, being your most authentic self. Your most authentic self might not involve telling the world about your sex life.
Exactly.
You know, that's not for everyone.
Yeah.
But it's about being true to yourself. And so often we know what that truth is. We already have it inside ourselves, but we're scared to take the risk because we're scared of what it might mean. And it's about just going, F it. I'm going to just, as in the swear word, I'm just not sure if I
You're
can
allowed to
swear. Fuck it. Fuck it. I'm just going to take that leap anyway and just do it.
Yes, amazing. Thank you so much for your time and for being so open and honest with us and giving us so many pearls of wisdom. Even just thinking back on this interview, I'm like, there's so many like good points you've spoken about. So thank you so much. It was really
Thank you for having me. I'm honestly honoured to be involved in any way. Like I said.